Okay, so we're back, and I dried my flamingo. You might notice these really cool little rings that I have here. These were splatters that I decided I didn't like as I was drying it. They had started to dry, and that's how acrylic paints are. It sets up on the edges, and the edges of the splatters dried. And then I decided to wipe them off with a paper towel, and it actually left those rings, which I actually love that. Here is where a splatter hit some kind of semi-wet blue background paint, and when I wiped it, it removed the splattered paint, and it also removed a little bit of the paint underneath that wasn't fully dry. So that's actually a really cool technique that I love. Removing paint when it's not completely dry on a layer that wasn't completely dry. I hope that makes sense. So now I'm ready to work on my foreground, my subject, the flamingo. I forgot to put some green in his eye, so I'm going to do that really quick. And I'm just going to use a small, this is a 1/2 inch flat. And I'm just going to put, I actually still have some green here. So this is a dulled down green. Maybe it's a little dark, which is good. You want your first layer to be dark. Don't worry about making it perfect because we're going to outline his eye with white, and white covers everything. So that's all I need to do for the base layer of his eye. We're always working in layers. So you want to get that base layer in. So now let's switch to our pinks. And again, I'm still going to use my big scruffy brush, which I've cleaned in the sink. I cleaned it pretty thoroughly. I switched out my water in my water cup because it was blue-green. And since we're switching to doing our warm colors now, I wanted to have clean water. And so I'm going to mix on the fly. I'm going to mix my colors as I need them. Trying to get centered in here for you. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to just start with a pink, and I always get my white first. Get some pink going. And maybe I'm not even going to add any, I'm not even going to add any other color to that. Later on, I'm going to shift the color around, but I'm going to start right here. I want this to be a little bit juicy, adding a little bit of water so it'll really flow out of my brush easily. Just a little bit juicy, not crazy. So I'm going to start over here where I know it's kind of shadowy. You know, you could paint through that shape, the beak. You know it's there. You know the shape. Don't be afraid to paint over that. And I'm letting these little streaky bristles do their job, and they're making a beautiful fuzzy edge for me. That's what I want. Or hairy edge, feathery edge, whatever you want to call it. Let's get a little bit darker now. So try to shift your colors a little bit. Don't paint too much with one color. That's boring. And let's get dark down here. I always kind of frame my subjects by making the corners a little bit darker. It just kind of, I think it helps. Get some dark in here. Now we know the whole direction of these feathers is that they go this way, but we just need to come around this bend and make our brush strokes go that way. Again, you might even want to stand for this. I'm sitting down with my canvas flat. Every once in a while you want to stand up and make sure that everything is not distorted. I'm not going to go over that too many times. Sometimes I limit my strokes. I tell myself 5 or 6 strokes and that's it. So now I'm going to get some yellow and make a peachy color. Again, I'm going to add a little bit of water. I just dip the tips of the bristles in my water cup. Get just a little bit of water in there. Bring that back to my plate so it's nice and juicy. Add a little white. If you go over it too many times, it starts to blend too much and it's not as interesting. And let's get this color up here, this peachy color. I tend to make my initial layers dark. This is what most acrylic painters do. And then you come back in with your lighter values later. But you got to get those darks and medium values in. First. His neck looks a little big there. And then I'm going to do a little bit of splatter here. Let some splatter go on the green areas. This is a little bit too much attention right here. I want my focus to be over here, so I'm just kind of trying to diminish that a little bit. All right. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to come back in and get a little bit, I'm going to clean my brush now because it's very pink and peachy. I want to get a little bit of yellow up at the top of his head, but I've got so much pink and peach in here that I'm going to just pinch that color out of there, swish my brush around in the water, wipe it again, and I'm going to mix up more of a yellow color now. A pale, I'm adding white and the yellow, getting a little bit of peach in there. So something like that. Again, I need a little bit of water to help it move. And maybe I'll splatter with the yellow. Yeah, that's good. Splattering with the yellow. Oop, don't like that stroke. If you do a stroke you really don't like, sometimes you can just kind of wipe at it right away. Don't want a light color there. Let me just fix that. That can even be a little bit purplish, so let's get some blue. Just gonna make a kind of a pinky purple color. That's pretty dark, so I don't want too much of that. Took some of it out of my brush. Just want a little bit of a shadow color. And use that purple in here where his beak is going to be. So I'm just putting a little bit of that shadowy purple. And sometimes I'll put a hint of it up here. All right. Try not to mess with it too much. Remember, we're trying to keep it spontaneous. It's not going to look perfect, and that's okay. We want that splashy, fun look. So I'm going to get that purple out of my brush. And I'm really cleaning my brush. I'm going to dump my water and get fresh water. So yeah, when you're working with a dark color, it really wants to take over. So you want to get your get stuff clean again so that it doesn't contaminate. It'll start carrying over into everything unless you really get it out of your brush. All right, so I want to pull this purple down when I look at my reference. When I look at my reference, this purple comes around and makes this shade right here. So I want to get that in here because mine is broken right there. So I'm going to use a smaller brush now. I'm going to go back to this 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to make, let's see, a purplish, maybe I'll use this pinkish color here. And I'm just going to I'm basically drawing that shape back in. Need to get this in here. I'm drawing in his beak a little bit better. I made it too big. And remember, I can always paint the background over again if I need to reshape that. If you mess up this shape, don't worry. You can always, you know, paint the background back in and reshape that. So this is too dark right here, so I'm going to do my best to just kind of soften it and lift some of it out, but I'm going to have to let that dry and come back in with a lighter color. So instead of trying to fix it completely, I'm just going to soften it. My main goal here is to get this shadow coming around this way and to get rid of these weird strokes that I got in here. So I'm just softening some of these weird purples. So when you mix purple with yellow, you do dull down the yellow, but that's okay. We need a little bit of a shadow up there. We need some to establish some form. So right here I've got a bit of white canvas showing, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to get some pink in there. And I like that, like a couple strokes of light pink. Don't do too many. I'm just following the direction of the stroke. And right now I'm coming near the focal area. So I want to get some bright, vivid color back in here. So I'm going back to my pink. And it's blending with the wet peach. So I might have to wait to come back and do this. Yeah, it's blending a little more than I want. Right now. Whoa. All right, so that's pretty good. We're just about wrapping up this section now. I see another blank spot here where there's canvas showing, so I'm painting over that. So the main thing is we established this form of the head. This is all filled in now. We can come back in with white and clean all of this up. The main thing is you want to have the neck all painted behind where his beak is. You want that all filled in. And you want it to go from pink to peach and then have this yellow around this side of his head. I'm going to add just a bit more. I'm going to do some yellow splatters. Very pale yellow splatters. Yep. And that's it. I'm going to let this dry.